Hey everyone, this is Lye Yosh. Welcome back to Life Study Library. Today I'm going to be talking about that surprising activity that if you do for just 10 minutes, it'll significantly lower anxiety and other negative stress. So we've all been in a nerve-wracking situation where we're told to just sit and wait for an eventful thing to happen. For example, if you are waiting at the lobby for an interview, or you're waiting for your turn to give a presentation in front of an audience. To most people, these situations are nerve-wracking to say the least, and these waiting periods gives you negative stress and negative thoughts. What if I do bad? I'm not really too confident about my performance. And these negative stress are kind of wasteful when you think about the time you have available while waiting, especially if you have to wait for a long period of time for waiting. For example, if you're waiting for your results for your SAT scores. That's a pretty big amount of time you got there that you can use to do your other responsibilities, or your hobbies, or virtually anything that comes into your mind. But then, during your waiting period, you're just sitting there and worrying about the stuff that you have no control of. Isn't that pretty wasteful? So today I have for you a scientifically recommended technique that you can use to lower and may even diminish your negative anxiety and negative stress. And I'm not here to talk about stuff like, thinking positively, or convincing yourself that you're succeeded, or visualize your success. I don't care about that. Rather, it's a specific activity that you can do for just 10 minutes that'll drastically help you with how to handle negative stress during waiting periods. And that specific activity is, get this, it's Tetris. Yeah, the one that you're thinking of right now. The game where you stack blocks and then make them form a row and then disappear. That kind of Tetris. I don't know any other kind. In this channel, I talk about these interesting scientific and psychological information by implementing data from scientific studies. So if you're interested in hearing more, then please stay tuned and please make sure to subscribe so you can watch my other videos and enjoy those ones as well. So okay, let's go. So today's study is done at the University of California, Riverside on 2018, so it's a relatively new study. I'm going to summarize it, but this study basically did multiple different experiments that took a total of 575 participants. So before I talk about how Tetris can help, I'm going to first talk about the importance of the state of the flow during stressful moments. And then I'm going to talk about how playing Tetris in a specific way can decrease and even diminish these negative feelings. So let's talk about the flow. A flow is a state in which you are in total concentration, and any other external or internal factors disappear. This is a common term in the athletic field. For example, a runner, when the runner is crouching down to start, he is so focused that the noise from the crowd disappears, the presence of the other runners disappear, and then the only thing that the runner will hear is the sound of the gun. And this is what the first study tested, whether the creation of the state of the flow contributed to mental stabilization, essentially losing negative stress. So the first study organized 125 samples who were all law graduates waiting for the results of the bar exam. While waiting for the results of the bar exam, they participated in 3 different activities that potentially put them in a state of flow. And the researchers later surveyed on how often they have engaged in flow-inducing activities and how intensely they felt that they were in a state of flow, all within during the waiting period. So the survey asked the participants to scale on how much they agreed on statements like, "I felt very interested in my activity," or "I lost track of time." Then the participants did another survey in the same exact style, but this one is about how frequently worried they were about the exam. So they had the same exact agreement scale on statements like, "I feel anxious or worried about the results of my bar exam." So the test measured the correlation between how intense the participants were feeling in the state of flow, and how much thought they put into the thing that they were initially worried about. So the results turned out like this. So the 3 activities they did, and it's my bad, I forgot to mention the 3 activities. They were reading, watching TV, and exercising. Among those activities, the one that most frequently gave them the state of flow was reading. And this is because reading required the most concentration. It's basically an activity that requires focus and active participation, and that leads to creating flow. So the overall result is this. People who experience flow the most frequently resulted in experiencing the least amount of negative stress, like worry, and they even experienced a greater amount of positive emotion. The analysis goes like this. When you're in the state of flow, you're focused so much on the stuff that you're doing. So much so that any exterior factor or your emotion that's not directly related to the activity that you're doing disappears. And this emotion includes negative stress, like worry. In addition, because you are focused so much on the activity, you find enjoyment out of it because you're really focused on the activity. You leave with the positive emotion when you come out of the flow. It makes you feel, wow, that was really fun use of my time. So the conclusion was, flow-inducing activity will make negative stress and worry disappear, and you will come out of it with a positive emotion because you are so interested in your activity. One caveat to the study is that, yeah, there was a correlation between flow and negative stress. But that isn't to say that participants did not feel stress at all. In fact, the study recorded that participants reported having the highest level of negative stress during at the beginning and at the end of their flow-inducing activity. What does this mean? In the case with reading, right when they started and finished reading, they were feeling stressed. This is because when they began reading, they just finished the exam, so they are still feeling stressed. And then the stress goes down as they enter flow until the very end when they are about to be told the result of the exam. So is there a better way? Is there a way to feel the least amount of stress during the largest amount of duration over the waiting period? Well, that's what the second study tested. So the idea is that you've already done what you have control of, which is taking the exam. And now you have nothing to do but wait. And feeling these negative stress during the waiting period is not a very effective way to spend your time, because rather than doing that, you could be doing some other stuff. For example, you could be spending your time working on your other responsibilities, or you could be spending time on your hobbies or interests. You have so many things you could do to effectively spend time during the waiting period. So you're pretty much wasting time by being stressed over something that you have no control of. And how can you do that? I just explained it to you at the last study. The previous study concluded that flow-inducing activities will not only serve as a distraction, but will also give you a positive emotion. The catch was, not all activities are flow-inducing, right? These activities can't be passive like watching TV, it has to be active like reading. And not all active activities create a flow to the maximum extent, right? Because the flow created by reading, for example, cannot be manipulated. What does that mean? Flow manipulation. This I mean in the sense that there are three categories of activities. The lowest quality activities. For example, watching Netflix. That is passive, so that's out of the story. Second category is active but inefficient activities. So, for example, reading. And this is because the flow cannot be manipulated. Any regular book would probably stay the same in its difficulty level, right? So your concentration, the flow, will stay in the exact intensity. And at the top category, these are activities that are active and can be manipulated. These are activities that are active and can manipulate the flow, meaning that the intensity of the flow, the concentration, can move up and down depending on the person. And this is where Tetris comes in. So Tetris is good because it creates the perfect condition in order to effectively produce the state of flow. The second part of the study collected 309 psychology undergraduates, and they were told a fake study that will examine the level of their physical attractiveness. It's pretty obvious that this will create a very stressful situation for the participants. So the researchers took a photo of each participant and gave them around to other participants in the study, who were told to rate how attractive the person in the photo is. And every participants were told that they would receive the results of the test at the end of the session, and were told to wait for a little bit until then. So the participants were stuck in a waiting period, which brought a very stressful tension, just like the other study. The unique thing about this study is that the waiting participants were divided into 3 groups, and were told to play Tetris for 10 minutes while waiting. Each group played Tetris on a specific challenge level. So the first group played on the easy level for 10 minutes, really easy and kinda boring. The second group played on the hard level, so hard that they would pretty much be overwhelmed in the game really quickly. And the third group played on the adaptive level, where the difficulty would increase depending on how well the player is doing. So they all played Tetris for a total of 10 minutes, either in really easy and boring mode, really hard and overwhelming mode, or adaptive mode, where the level of difficulty changes depending on the person. So the result turned out like this. Participants who played on the adaptive level reported they had the highest frequency of being in the state of flow, and correspondingly, they measured to have the least amount of negative stress and the most amount of positive emotion. So this means that if it's too easy, it's going to get boring, and you're not going to be able to focus on the game. If it's too hard, your mind's going to be overwhelmed by the difficulty, and you'll still not be focused. So it has to be in a mode that adapts to your performance. And this adaptation of difficulty cannot be achieved by any other active activities like reading. So to sum it up, often in life, and especially during a waiting period for an important event, will create negative stress. And this negative stress is pretty wasteful when thinking about how potentially useful you can use your time. In order to decrease the amount of these negative stress by playing Tetris on adaptive level, so pretty much regular mode for Tetris, for just 10 minutes, playing Tetris on adaptive level for just 10 minutes would drastically decrease and may even diminish these negative stress. This is because it has the right amount of difficulty to keep you focused so that your mind can shut down any worries or stress or any other thoughts for that matter. And since the difficulty level would increase depending on the performance, your intensity of yourself in the state of flow would have to adapt and increase as well. So there's potentially no way of distracting yourself out of the state of flow, at least for that 10 minutes, and at least until your stress becomes insignificant, and until your emotional state can get stabilized. So in that sense, any other game would work just fine as long as they pass the criteria. that the difficulty is adaptive and it keeps you focused so that you can cut away any distractions or negative stress. So yeah, if you have any games you can play on your phone that you think it passes the criteria and it might help you, I highly suggest you to try it out. I would personally stick with Tetris, just because that game has an obvious increase when it comes to levels of difficulty. And yeah, that was pretty much it for that topic. And also, I wanted to mention one more thing about concentration and flow. So, being able to concentrate is an ability that is most definitely wanted in the current society. You probably heard this in so many places by so many people that because of the advancement of technology, we have so many new ways to distract ourselves. So, it probably goes without saying that being able to concentrate and focus in a distracted society is highly, highly valued. And also, being able to concentrate doesn't necessarily mean that you have to grind for multiple hours. Whether it's studying for an exam or working or whatever, you can't just expect to sit down and grind for 10 hours and expect yourself to learn the materials effectively. Scientifically, that's not how it works, but a lot of people, for some reason, think that's the case. And a lot of people who tell these advices about concentration, they say stuff like, have an environment where you can concentrate, or time yourself, or break it into small pieces. And while these advices are not completely wrong, they're not concrete enough. So there was another study done, which took a total number of 17,621 samples, and it presented a scientific method on how to create and maintain effective concentration. And they also figured out the appropriate time for effective concentration. So you don't have to sit down and grind for 10 hours, you can get the maximum efficiency out of the minimum amount of time. And that video is going to be my next video, which is going to be titled The Actual Method for Effective Concentration. It takes a rather large amount of samples, so it might apply to your life as well. If you want to watch my other videos, then please subscribe to my channel. That would be much appreciated. So make sure to click the subs. I'll see you in my next video, or honestly in any one of my videos. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for contributing to my project. I'll see you soon. Bye.